Thank you everyone for joining me this evening, and thank you for letting me join you. As we were talking beforehand, these are pretty challenging times, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you this evening. And also with everything going on, it really provides a lot of extra perspective. There are a lot of difficulties. There are a lot of folks who are having a very difficult time right now. And so, we realize at Nature First that, perhaps, preservation of nature isn't on top of people's minds when they're trying to put food on the table or pay their mortgage or their rent. But we do still think that this is an important topic. So maybe it can act as a little bit of a distraction for what's going on, and you can learn a little bit about our organization and what we stand for and what we're trying to accomplish. My name is Scott Bacon, and I'm one of the co-founders of Nature First. I'm a longtime Colorado resident. I grew up here, moved to Colorado when I was 6 years old. My day job is as a director of product for a large software company. But I've been a hobbyist and a part-time professional photographer for 30 years. So I've sold my work ever since I got out of college. Mostly I use it to help fund new equipment and to take trips into different places. I do focus on nature and landscapes, and since I've been doing this for quite a while, I started out back in the film days, and to give you even maybe a little bit more perspective, I started out before autofocus. So I can vividly remember picking up the first autofocus camera, and what a wonder I thought that was. I've been very active in the photo community since college and since the internet. David Kingham and Jennifer are actually really good friends of mine, and I've known them for a long time. And I was very active in the Nature Photographers Network for quite a while. Social media, a little bit less so. I can't say that social media is my bag. I haven't really ever got the hang of it or been able to put the time into it. But today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our organization called Nature First. I want to start out by talking a little bit about one of our locations here in Colorado, Hanging Lake. How many of you recognize this place? If you haven't actually been there yourself, I'm sure you've probably heard about it. My first visit to Hanging Lake was in the late 1980s, and I can just vividly remember the magic of that first visit. When I arrived at the parking lot, there were no other cars in that parking lot. When I got out onto the trail, it was very faint and very primitive trail, and I felt like I was being transported into another world. I kept asking myself, is this really Colorado? I had done a lot of mountain climbing and even spent some time in the canyon country, but this did not look like Colorado. It was lush and it was green, and you got to certain parts of the trail and you were almost overwhelmed by the sound of the water rushing down through this very narrow little canyon. And at the time there in that first visit when I arrived, I can remember coming up to that point where you kind of climb up the cliffside, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's the hanging part of Hanging Lake, and the stairs were old cement stairs, and they were kind of crumbling, and you sort of climbed over tree roots, and there was a old rickety iron railing that had been put up years and years and years ago. And then I kind of came around that bend and saw this view, and it really stuck with me for years and years. And I was the only one there. This was before they had put up a boardwalk like they have today. So there was just a trail on sort of top of the the dam and the travertine formations that make that dam. And I stayed there for hours and took a few photographs with my Pentax K1000 and my Ektachrome film. And no one else showed up until about 10 in the morning. And so I had this place all to myself. And so as the years went on, I continued to visit Hanging Lake. It was one of my favorite places. I just loved it. And you know, over the decades, I saw that each time I went to go visit, more and more people were there. I would show up, and even early in the morning, more cars would be in the parking lot. And every time I hiked the trail was a little bit wider. There were more sort of offshoots and social trails where people had gone off into the other parts of the vegetation. And unfortunately, there was more trash along the trail. And since I'm a techie guy, I've had a website for a very long time, and I've posted my pictures there, and people were always emailing me and you know, using my contact form to ask me about my photos and where my photos were, where the locations were. And I started to wonder if possibly me having these photos on my website and answering all these emails and freely telling people where this place was. It's right off I-70. It's super easy to find. I was wondering if I was contributing to that increased visitation and sort of that decreased experience, because every time I went, this experience was less and less magical. Now, I don't think any time you can you know, visit a place, it's never like the first time, right? But it was you know, just the extended crowds and the trash and everything were just lessening that experience. And then I got married and I had my own kids. And about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to take my kids to Hanging Lake. And if you've been there recently, you'll know that the parking lot is no longer at the trailhead. It's a giant paved parking lot about a quarter of a mile down a paved path, which is really hot in the sun. And when we did the hike, it was not the same. It was very crowded. My daughter saw a dirty diaper on the side of the trail. And so, you know, their experience in this place was very different from mine. And that made a really big impact on me. Just last year, the National Forest System had to install a permit system. And so this place, this beautiful place, has really changed dramatically over just the last 30 years. Over the last decade, even, we've seen just an incredible rise in the visitation in all around the world, in the natural areas all around the world. From Mesa Arch that you see here, which is in the Canyonlands of Canyonlands National Park of Utah, you know, to places like the famous Instagram Wanaka tree in New Zealand, and everywhere in between. A couple factors, maybe more than a couple factors, have contributed to this increase in growing number of visitation. And one of those things is the sharing of photos online. It's introducing people to areas that they may have never discovered before, that they may have you know, had to have purchased a book in order to find areas like this. And then the other thing is the significant rise of nature photography as a hobby. And it's you know, I think it's amazing to see more and more people getting out of doors and celebrating the natural world. But a lot of these areas just aren't built to support this huge increase in visitation, especially at the rate at which it has happened. You know, areas that were once beautiful, like Hanging Lake and Mesa Arch, and you know, used to be untouched, are now just completely trampled. Some are utterly destroyed. We see this with, wildlife and vegetation that once thrived in these areas. Now, as more and more crowds of visitors, these areas have changed dramatically. I imagine that all of you probably have your special area, or many different areas where you've seen this increase in visitation and the impact that it's had on our wildlands. So one of the biggest challenges is that many of the people that are heading out into the natural lands today are from urban areas, and they're not aware of the impact that they are making on the environment. Most of them don't have any kind of desire to damage the environment. Now there are those handful of that do damage it on purpose, but a lot of the impact that is happening today is just through just sheer lack of knowledge. A lot of people don't even give a second thought to walking across vegetation. Grassy areas can just be turned into mud holes, and fields of flowers get trampled, and then those flowers don't get to seed and they don't regrow the next year. Some environments are incredibly fragile, like we have here the alpine tundra. A gentleman was mentioning Rocky Mountain National Park. Plants up in the alpine tundra can be damaged with just a few footsteps. And then of course there's the cryptobiotic soil that we have out in our canyon lands and close in Utah and New Mexico and Arizona. And some of that soil can take over 70 years to regrow and to recover from a single footstep. And so we not only see this with sort of a lack of knowledge of the general environment, but we also see this lack of knowledge with wildlife, and people put themselves and the animals in danger. We see this every year, every summer up in Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park. Even the presence of these increased visitation in some areas will upset the balance and the comfort of the wildlife. We just need to recognize that each area of our planet is delicate and unique, and a lot of these areas that we are visiting are not our city parks, and they're certainly not our shopping malls or Disneylands, and they take a lot more care to preserve as we visit these places. Another thing that we're seeing with the increase in the popularity of photography as a hobby is this sort of sense of competition amongst photographers, and this is amplified with social media and the internet. Certain viewpoints, when they're posted online, become magnets, and then each photographer that goes there tries to create an image that is more and more extreme to get the attention of their followers or of the rest of the internet. Photographers are going to great lengths to get amazing photographs, and they're pushing the boundaries of what that environment can actually handle. And this is happening in a lot of our very delicate places. Oftentimes, even ropes and signs and regulations and laws don't seem to stop the determined photographer who is on a mission to get, quote unquote, the shot. Every time a new photo, or photo of a new location is posted online, it kind of becomes the new hotspot, whether that's a very localized thing or an entire country like Iceland, and photographers flock there to create their own versions or to create the exact versions that they saw on the internet of that particular photo. And again, there's very little thought to what kind of impact this is having on those locations. So if we continue this kind of pattern and it continues to accelerate at the rate that it has over the last 5 or 10 years, we're going to destroy a ever increasing number of our natural places. These places are the ones that we celebrate as photographers, and they're going to become just the places that we've destroyed, or that we've damaged beyond belief. And so the question is, what can be done about this? How can we change this sort of competitive and getting the shot at all costs type of mentality with nature photographers? And then how can we extend that to the general public? Because when we talk about photographers, there's those of us who may have a little bit more serious gear, and then there's just about everybody else who has a cell phone in their pocket and is taking photos. We start asking ourselves if there's any hope at all to slow down the damage that is happening today. So in 2018, photographers in the Western United States began talking about these issues and the impacts, and started talking about what could be done. A lot of these photographers that I talked to and some of my friends talked to felt like the situation was hopeless, like there wasn't anything that could be done to address these problems. Various proposals and sort of white papers were written to try to come up with some different solutions, and those were circulated around the photography community, and input was recruited and sought from a wide breadth of different photographers all across the world. In the winter of 2019, a group of professional nature photographers and myself, being the only hobbyist of the group, gathered to spend a weekend kind of talking about these issues and seeing if we could come up with some solutions. And what we decided was that we needed a set of guidelines, for responsible nature photography. We knew that we weren't going to be able to put a whole bunch of quote unquote rules in place, but we thought of these things as guidelines, and we thought that if we could come up with a set of guidelines that were fairly common sense, we could start to change the mindset of the photographic community. And so we came up with a set of principles that we thought just about everybody could agree would lessen the impact of nature photographers on the environment. We knew that these guidelines needed to be easy to remember, easy to apply across all kinds of different environments across the entire world. And then we would need to get, build some momentum and a movement where these principles could become sort of agreed upon, and maybe a new standard for a large set of nature photographers around the world, and we think that we can start to change this tide. So in the end, we ended up with 7 principles that we proposed again to a set of photographers internationally, and we made a few iterations and a few tweaks. We got a lot of good ideas from a lot of different people in a lot of different ecosystems that were very knowledgeable, and these are the principles that we came up with. You can see them here. This sort of summarizes them all up into one slide, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these. So the first principle is prioritize the well-being of nature over photography. And this is where the name Nature First comes from. It comes from this first principle. We need to be more concerned about the well-being of the natural world than we are about getting the photograph. That's really what it comes down to. If taking a particular photograph is going to damage that ecosystem or that part of the environment, then we need to be brave enough to say, hey, maybe the photo isn't worth it. Our photographs should celebrate the natural world, not continue to damage it. So we view ourselves as guests in these wild places. And they're home to all kinds of unique natural features, diverse and delicate ecosystems and plant life and wildlife. And so we should strive to tread lightly and cause as little impact and harm when we visit these places to make photographs. Principle number 2 is educate yourself about the places you photograph. Different landscapes around the US and around the world require different kinds of stewardship practices to care for those places. Like I mentioned, the high alpine tundra is very, very different than the desert Southwest, which is very, very different from, say, the rainforests or the mature forests in the Pacific Northwest. And so we need to be knowledgeable about all of these different environments that we choose to visit and photograph so that we can minimize our impact on these places. We also find that when people take the time to learn about the area, they just naturally have more respect and more reverence for that area. And so we have tons of resources that we can leverage to learn about these, these areas that we're going to go visit. The internet is full of information that is, at our fingertips, whether that's the site of a national park or the site of a environmental organization. And then there's all kinds of forums and clubs that have local experts that can help provide us with this information to learn about these places. Number 3 is simply reflecting on the possible impacts of your actions. And this might seem overly obvious, but again, we think that that people get wrapped up in the act of photography and the act of getting the shot. And so just stopping and sort of taking a breath and thinking about where you are. This is also going to help your photography, right? If you stop and take a breath and maybe look down at your feet. Are there wildflowers there? Maybe turn around and look behind you instead of towards the grand vista. But taking some time to just sort of stop and enjoy enjoy your time in the natural world versus just rushing up the trail to get your photo and then packing up your bag and ripping back out of there. We think that if folks take just a minute to reflect on the impacts of their actions, then they will tend to lessen that impact just naturally. Number 4 is use discretion if sharing locations. And out of all of the principles that we came up with, this is the stickiest one. This is the one that causes the most flame on the internet. This is the one that we as a group spent the most time choosing these words. And so you'll notice that we don't say do not share locations. Number 4 is very purposefully worded, not in that way. We want people, again, to use discretion. We want them to reflect, again, just like number 3, if they're going to share those locations. Because sharing the locations on the internet is undoubtedly one of the primary reasons for the increased visitations, in these special places. And so we would like folks to think about what the impact is going to be if you share a location. There's all kinds of nuance around this. Sometimes it's fine to share a location if you wait 3 or 4 weeks. The wildflower, the poppy bloom that happened last year in California that was all over the news because thousands and thousands were showing up and trampling the poppies. If that information of some of those areas of that poppy bloom had been delayed a few weeks, it probably wouldn't have mattered near as much. So, you can share locations, delayed in time. You can share general locations. I took this photo in Rocky Mountain National Park, and kind of leave it up to the individual to go do a little bit more research, learn a little bit more about Rocky Mountain National Park and where that location might be. And that will then sort of feed their respect and their reverence for that particular place. So, at the end here, if we have time for questions, I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, because like I said, that one is definitely a hot point. Number 5 is simply know the rules and know and follow the rules and regulations. It can be really tempting to hop over a fence or step over a rope, but as soon as you do that, it can have a snowball effect. As soon as one person moves beyond the sign or over the rope, lots of other photographers start to do that. I saw this happen 2 years ago at the Maroon Bells. There's now a rope up at the Maroon Bells that they're trying to regrow some of the growth along the shore of the lake there. And as soon as one photographer stepped across, then another, then another, then another, and before you knew it, 250 people were standing on the other side of the rope so that they could get their shot of the Maroon Bells. And so while no one likes to be told what to do, obviously, a lot of these rules and regulations are in place to help those people who do not have specific knowledge of this area, to help provide some guidelines for them. And so, knowing and following these rules, we think is pretty important. Number 6 is always follow leave no trace principles and strive to leave places better than you found them. You probably recognized right off the bat that there are a lot of commonalities between Nature First and Leave No Trace, and that is certainly not an accident. Leave No Trace is a wonderful organization. Their world headquarters are right here in Colorado, and they've been really successful in promoting the Leave No Trace principles, and they've also been really successful in educating folks on how to follow those principles and having minimal impact in the backcountry. And so we are a partner with Leave No Trace, and we just wanted to add on to the end of that, try to leave places better than you found them. This is how my dad taught me to behave. If you see trash on a trail, just pick it up and put it in your pocket, or pick it up and put it in a bag, because then the next person behind you, they're going to have a better experience because you help things out just a little bit. We never left the campsite without scouring it and picking up every little tiny bit of trash. And I did this with my kids. I would give them a quarter for every piece of trash that they found. And so we still today scour our campsites after a weekend of camping and make sure that we have left nothing there. In my mind, when I go backpacking, there's really no better feeling than walking away from a site and knowing that the next person who walks by will not even be able to tell that I spent 2 nights there. So that is number 6. Number 7 is sort of our promotion. We would like folks to learn these principles and then sort of spread the word and help us educate others about these Nature First principles. And a lot of people say, well, what can I do? I don't have a huge YouTube following or a huge Instagram following, or I don't even have a website. We think that regardless of the size of your audience, by the way, I don't have huge followings either. So regardless of the size of your audience, we think that everybody can do their part. You can talk about it when you're standing at the viewpoint with other photographers. You can talk about it with your friends, over dinner and a beer about what these principles are, and sort of a new ethic of nature photography and behaving in the wild places. Of course, we definitely run into folks who are comfortable sort of playing that advocate role, and we encourage them to share the nature first principles on their social media accounts and on their websites. Just know that every little action that you portray when you're out in nature is likely being observed by somebody else. Sometimes you're all alone, but a lot of times you're not. And so, bad behavior by one photographer can reflect poorly on the rest of nature photographers. And so, those were the principles that we came up with. We launched Nature First on Earth Day last year in April of 2019. And today we have about 2,200 members, and they reside in more than 53 different countries across the world. And we also have some of the very top nature photographers as members and advocates. Nature First exists to promote responsible nature photography through the 7 principles that we just walked through. And then this movement of Nature First also aims to encourage photographers to use their photography and their passion for the natural world to educate the public about these places through their networks and through their communities and through their photography. So I would like to invite you to join us and spread the word. You can join Nature First right there at our website, naturefirstphotography.org. And I would encourage you to learn about the principles. When you join Nature First, you make a commitment or a pledge that you yourself are going to follow those 7 principles. And there's absolutely no cost to join. We are very interested in building a global movement. We're not interested in making money. We're not interested in a ton of publicity. We're doing this, for the preservation of nature, and we think that we can do this best by spreading the word and having folks join us and learn about the principles and start practicing those principles. And we really only think it's going to be as successful, as we build that community and they start to adopt the principles. So again, I would encourage you to visit us at naturefirstphotography.org. We are also forming a number of regional groups, and so we have a Nature First Photography Rocky Mountain group that is sort of all of the members, not all of them, but some of the members in our Rocky Mountain group here, our Rocky Mountain region. And they can talk about Nature First, and they can share their experiences. And then they also, obviously, they share their photos and their love of nature. If you do have, social media accounts and you want to post about Nature First, we always encourage people to use that hashtag Nature First on your photos and on your posts. That draws a little bit of attention. Sometimes pulls people in that haven't heard about Nature First before, and that is another good way to spread the word. And so we encourage you to spread the principles and the word of Nature First, both online and in person, like we're doing here tonight. And that's all I have for you. If we have time for questions, I would be happy to take those now.
Yeah, in fact, Lori does have a question. She said, how do these principles apply to our urban experience?
That's a great question. there are definitely more and more sort of natural slash urban experiences, and I think you could very easily apply these principles in those city parks, or in those natural areas that have been, put in various, parts of our cities and towns, to, just break up the pavement. I think the nature first principles absolutely apply there. If you're talking about a strict urban environment, sort of paved over city street, downtown 16th Street Mall, you might be able to stretch that to apply it to the trees that are planted along the 16th Street Mall or something like that. But we're really focused on these natural areas that have less of the capability to handle large numbers of visitors, right? So even if you're at a viewpoint, a lot of these viewpoints in the national parks, they are built to handle a lot of people. Certainly that's more true in our city parks. They're built to handle more people. And so we're really more focused on those purely natural environments where you see that fragility and you see that severe impact that increased visitation is causing.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Hey, it's J.R. Schnelzer. Hey, I need to get a hold of you. I need your contact information. Having been a park ranger up in Estes in the mid to late 80s, I've seen a lot, but I've got some other projects I'm working on that I think we can both benefit from. So how do I get your direct contact information?
Yep, so that's really easy. There are a couple ways. One, you could go to the website there, and there's a contact form. I receive those emails from that contact form, or you can simply email me at scott@naturefirstphotography.org. And happy to talk to you about any of those initiatives that you're interested in. We are today still a very small organization. We only have sort of a core staff of about 5 people. And then we have some community advocates that are building those regional groups. So we have limited bandwidth. We also have very limited funds at this time. But we have a lot of plans to grow that, and some of that is through partnerships with different organizations like Leave No Trace, and other similarly minded organizations. And I'd be happy to entertain any ideas and initiatives that you have.
Yeah, because I represent another big photographic organization. I think there's some cohesiveness here because we have our own ethics committees and some of the things you're talking about. So let me get a hold of you offline and we'll talk a little further, okay?
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Thanks. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, when we lived in New Mexico, we went to Chaco Canyon. And to get into Chaco Canyon, you go blah, 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 follow vehicles and stuff. And I think that was a plus because a lot of people, what we did is we signed up for a tour with the University of New Mexico and they took their bus in. And we had a tour guide there and it was a controlling thing. And I know talk has been to make a road in there and make it more accessible. And it seems like we need to make some of these places less accessible, maybe. And the people who really know about it and appreciate it then will be the ones that go there.
Yep, that's certainly one approach. And there are definitely places, especially those culturally sensitive sites with those ancient ruins that once they're gone, they're gone, right? Once they're gone, they're absolutely gone, and there's no way to restore them to their original places. So that is certainly one way to go. The other thing that we are really going to press on is the education front, and we really folks who run workshops, so that folks who run workshops, they can, and then they can also teach the principles of nature first. So we think that that could be a really great sort of avenue and leverage for us.
Any other
Scott,
questions?
this is Dave Van Riper. And I'm wondering if these 7 principles are printed up on any kind of nice little cards, whatever, that members of the LPS or anyone else that's out somewhere and they observe someone who is not exactly following the 7 principles, or is obviously not aware of them, that you could, rather than just stop and say, excuse me, you could pull this card out and as you talk to them, hand it to them.
Absolutely. We think that that's a great idea, and we have had a bunch of those cards made up. I'd be happy to somehow share them with this group if you guys are interested. The idea was that we would be attending some photo conferences this spring and summer and fall, and be handing those out to not only individuals but group leaders. But obviously a lot of those in-person events have been canceled. So yes, that is absolutely in our plan, and I've got a pretty good size stack already printed up and sitting by the desk. And like I said, I'd be happy to share those with you if we want to arrange something. I could drive up and drop those off with folks.
I think that since we're not meeting in person, that might be difficult, but I'm wondering if you have anything that's like a PDF that people can just print and then, cut into card size or whatever. Everyone could like print their own and just have it with them.
Yeah, that's a great idea too. And we have just started talking about that over the last month or so. We want to sort of put together a little member kit.
That's a great idea.
That would be a great, part of a member kit, so that when you sign up, you get access to a special web page where you could download a few of these things, as well as like today we have the Nature First logos with proud member. Folks are downloading that and using it on social media and using it on their website. So yeah, I think that's a great idea for our member kit.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else raising their hand. I'm scrolling through. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Scott. It was very enlightening. I have to say that I've run into, most of the issues that I've run into have been around wildlife. So wildlife photography, especially the elk rut in Rocky is just insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not just,
Let me tell you some stories
people.
about that.
What's that?
I can tell you a million stories about that.
Oh, I'm sure. And it's only gotten worse. So yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, landscape photography, it's pretty easy to be, well, not easy, but it's easy to be mindful. Like when you make that decision, you can be mindful. When you're trying to get wildlife, sometimes that goes out the window because you're not thinking about it. And of course, the wildlife is moving and you want to get that. So it definitely is helpful to even be mindful in those situations, I would say.
Yeah, we just shared an article that one of our contributors wrote that was specifically targeted towards wildlife photography. Since myself and Eric Stensland we're more landscape guys, we didn't know all the ins and outs of that, and so we collaborated with one of our contributors to write an article that is specifically targeted towards wildlife, and it's very, very well done.
And is that on the website?
You can find that on the website.
Awesome. Yep. Great. Thanks. Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you very much, Scott, for taking your evening and sharing your time with us. now I will try to, well, I'm going to stop recording and then I'm going to figure out how to log out unless anyone else has any questions. Jim, you have a question?
It's my pleasure. Thank you again.
Bye.